The M16 rifle, officially designated rifle, caliber 5.56 mm, M16, is a United States military adaptation of the ArmaLite AR-15 rifle. The original M16 was a select-fire, 5.56 x 45 mm rifle with a 20-round magazine. In 1964, the M16 entered American military service and the following year was deployed for jungle warfare operations during the Vietnam War. In 1969, the M16A1 replaced the M14 rifle to become the U.S. military's standard service rifle. The M16A1 improvements include a bolt assist, chrome-plated bore and a new 30-round magazine. In 1983, the USMC adopted the M16A2 rifle and the U.S. Army adopted it in 1986. The M16A2 fires the improved 5.56 x 45 mm NATO cartridge and has a new adjustable rear sight, case deflector, heavy barrel, improved handguard, pistol grip and buttstock, as well as a semi-auto and 3-round burst-only fire selector. Adopted in 1998, the M16A4 is the fourth generation of the M16 series. It is equipped with a removable carrying handle and Picatinny rail for mounting optics and other ancillary devices. The M16 has also been widely adopted by other militaries around the world. Total worldwide production of M16s has been approximately 8 million, making it the most produced firearm of its 5.56 mm caliber. The U.S. Army has largely replaced the M16 in combat units with the shorter and lighter M4 carbine, and the U.S. Marine Corps approved a similar change in October 2015. History. Background. After World War II, the United States military started looking for a single automatic rifle to replace the M1 Garand, M1, M2 carbines, M1918 Browning automatic rifle, M3 grease gun, and Thompson submachine gun. However, early experiments with select-fire versions of the M1 Garand proved disappointing. During the Korean War, the select-fire M2 carbine largely replaced the submachine gun in U.S. service and became the most widely used carbine variant. However, combat experience suggested that the .30 carbine round was underpowered. American weapons designers concluded that an intermediate round was necessary, and recommended a small-caliber, high-velocity cartridge. However, senior American commanders, having faced fanatical enemies and experienced major logistical problems during World War II and the Korean War, insisted that a single powerful .30 caliber cartridge be developed that could not only be used by the new automatic rifle, but by the new general-purpose machine gun in concurrent development. This culminated in the development of the 7.62 x 51 mm NATO cartridge and the M14 rifle, which was an improved M1 Garand with a 20-round magazine and automatic fire capability. The U.S. also adopted the M60 general-purpose machine gun. Its NATO partners adopted the FN FAL and HKG3 rifles, as well as the FN MAG and Rheinmetall MG3 GPMGs. The first confrontations between the AK-47 and the M14 came in the early part of the Vietnam War. Battlefield reports indicated that the M14 was uncontrollable in full auto and that soldiers could not carry enough ammo to maintain fire superiority over the AK-47. And, while the M2 carbine offered a high rate of fire, it was underpowered and ultimately outclassed by the AK-47. A replacement was needed, a medium between the traditional preference for high-powered rifles such as the M16 and the lightweight firepower of the M2 carbine. As a result, the Army was forced to reconsider a 1957 request by General Willard G. Wyman, commander of the U.S. Continental Army Command, to develop a 223 caliber select fire rifle weighing 6 pounds when loaded with a 20-round magazine. The 5.56 mm round had to penetrate a standard U.S. helmet at 500 yards and retain a velocity in excess of the speed of sound, while matching or exceeding the wounding ability of the .30 carbine cartridge. This request ultimately resulted in the development of a scaled-down version of the ArmaLite AR-15, called AR-15 rifle. However, despite overwhelming evidence that the AR-15 could bring more firepower to bear than the M16, the Army opposed the adoption of the new rifle. In January 1963, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara concluded that the AR-15 was the superior weapons system and ordered a halt to M14 production. At the time, the AR-15 was the only rifle available that could fulfill the requirement of a universal infantry weapon for issue to all services. After modifications, the new redesigned rifle was subsequently adopted as the M16 rifle and went into production in March 1964. Was much lighter compared to the M16. It replaced, ultimately allowing soldiers to carry more ammunition. The air-cooled, gas-operated, magazine-fed assault rifle was made of steel, aluminum alloy and composite plastics, truly cutting-edge for the time. Designed with full and semi-automatic capabilities, the weapon initially did not respond well to wet and dirty conditions, sometimes even jamming in combat. After a few minor modifications, the weapon gained in popularity among troops on the battlefield. Adoption. In July 1960, General Curtis LeMay was impressed by a demonstration of the ArmaLite AR-15. In the summer of 1961, General LeMay was promoted to United States Air Force Chief of Staff, and requested 80,000 AR-15s. However, General Maxwell D. Taylor, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, advised President John F. Kennedy that having two different calibers within the military system at the same time would be problematic, and the request was rejected. In October 1961, William Godel, a senior man at the Advanced Research Projects Agency, sent 10 AR-15s to South Vietnam. The reception was enthusiastic, and in 1962, another 1,000 AR-15s were sent. United States Army Special Forces personnel filed battlefield reports lavishly praising the AR-15 and the stopping power of the 5.56 mm cartridge, and pressed for its adoption. The damage caused by the 5.56 mm bullet was originally believed to be caused by tumbling due to the slow 1-in-14-inch rifling twist rate. However, any pointed lead-core bullet will tumble after penetration in flesh, because the center of gravity is towards the rear of the bullet. The large wounds observed by soldiers in Vietnam were actually caused by bullet fragmentation, which was created by a combination of the bullet's velocity and construction. These wounds were so devastating that the photographs remained classified into the 1980s. U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara now had two conflicting views: the ARPA report favoring the AR-15 and the Army's position favoring the M16. Even President Kennedy expressed concern, so McNamara ordered Secretary of the Army Cyrus Vance to test the M16, the AR-15 and the AK-47. the Army reported that only the M14 was suitable for service, but Vance wondered about the impartiality of those conducting the tests. He ordered the Army Inspector General to investigate the testing methods used. The Inspector General confirmed that the testers were biased towards the M14. In January 1963, Secretary McNamara received reports that M14 production was insufficient to meet the needs of the armed forces and ordered a halt to M14 production. At the time, the AR-15 was the only rifle that could fulfill a requirement of a universal infantry weapon for issue to all services. McNamara ordered its adoption, despite receiving reports of several deficiencies, most notably the lack of a chrome-plated chamber. After modifications, the new redesigned rifle was renamed the rifle, caliber 5.56 mm M16. Inexplicably, the modification to the new M16 did not include a chrome-plated barrel. Meanwhile, the Army relented and recommended the adoption of the M16 for jungle warfare operations. However, the Army insisted on the inclusion of a forward assist to help push the bolt-into battery in the event that a cartridge failed to seat into the chamber. The Air Force Colt and Eugene Stoner believed that the addition of a forward assist was an unjustified expense. As a result, the design was split into two variants: the Air Force's M16 without the forward assist, and the XM16E1 with the forward assist for the other service branches. In November 1963, McNamara approved the U.S. Army's order of 85,000 XM16E1s, and to appease General LeMay, the Air Force was granted an order for another 19,000 M16s. In March 1964, M16 rifle went into production, and the Army accepted delivery of the first batch of 2,129 rifles later that year, and an additional 57,240 rifles the following year. In 1964, the Army was informed that DuPont could not mass-produce the IMR 4475 stick powder to the specifications demanded by the M16. Therefore, Olin Mathewson Company provided a high-performance ball propellant, while the Olin WC-846 powder achieved the desired 3,300 feet per second muzzle velocity. It produced much more fouling that quickly jammed the M16's action. In March 1965, the Army began to issue the XM16E1 to infantry units. However, the rifle was initially delivered without adequate cleaning kits or instructions because Colt had claimed the M16 was self-cleaning. As a result, reports of stoppages in combat began to surface. The most severe problem was known as failure to extract. The spent cartridge case remained lodged in the chamber after the rifle was fired. Documented accounts of dead U.S. troops found next to disassembled rifles eventually led to a congressional investigation. We left with 72 men in our platoon and came back with 19. Believe it or not, you know what killed most of us? Our own rifle. Practically every one of our dead was found with his torn down next to him where he had been trying to fix it. In February 1967, the improved XM16E1 was standardized as the M16A1. The new rifle had a chrome-plated chamber and bore to eliminate corrosion and stuck cartridges, and other minor modifications. New cleaning kits, powder solvents and lubricants were also issued. Intensive training programs in weapons cleaning were instituted, including a comic book-style operations manual. As a result, reliability problems diminished and the M16A1 rifle achieved widespread acceptance by U.S. troops in Vietnam. In 1969, the M16A1 officially replaced the M14 rifle to become the U.S. military's standard service rifle. In 1970, the new WC-844 powder was introduced to reduce fouling reliability. During the early part of its career, the M16 had a reputation for poor reliability and a malfunction rate of 2 per 1,000 rounds fired. The M16 uses a unique gas-powered operating system. This gas operating system works by passing high-pressure propellant gases tapped from the barrel down a tube and into the carrier group within the upper receiver, and is commonly but incorrectly referred to as a direct impingement gas system. The gas expands within a donut-shaped gas cylinder within the carrier. Because the bolt is prevented from moving forward by the barrel, the carrier is driven to the rear by the expanding gases and thus converts the energy of the gas to movement of the rifle's parts. The bolt bears a piston head and the cavity in the bolt carrier is the piston sleeve. It is more correct to call it an internal piston system. Quote, "This design is much lighter and more compact than a gas piston design. However, this design requires the combustion byproducts from the discharged cartridge be blown into the receiver as well. This accumulating carbon and vaporized metal buildup within the receiver and bolt carrier negatively affects reliability and necessitates more intensive maintenance on the part of the individual soldier. The channeling of gases into the bolt carrier during operation increases the amount of heat that is deposited in the receiver while firing the M16, and causes essential lubricant to be burned off. This requires frequent and generous applications of appropriate lubricant. Lack of proper lubrication is the most common source of weapon stoppages or jams. The original M16 fared poorly in the jungles of Vietnam and was infamous for reliability problems in the harsh environment. As a result, it became the target of a congressional investigation. The investigation found that the M16 was billed as self-cleaning. The M16 was issued to troops without cleaning kits or instruction on how to clean the rifle. The M16 and 5.56 x 45 mm cartridge was tested and approved with the use of a DuPont ArmaLite AR-15 stick powder that was switched to Olin Matheson WC-846 ball powder, which produced much more fouling that quickly jammed the action of the M16. The M16 lacked a forward assist. The M16 lacked a chrome-plated chamber, which allowed corrosion problems and contributed to case extraction failures. When these issues were addressed and corrected by the M16A1, the reliability problems decreased greatly. According to a 1968 Department of Army report, the M16A1 rifle achieved widespread acceptance by U.S. troops in Vietnam. Most men armed with the M16 in Vietnam rated this rifle's performance high. However, many men entertained some misgivings about the M16's reliability. When asked what weapon they preferred to carry in combat, 85% indicated that they wanted either the M16 or its submachine gun version. The XM177E2, also the M14, was preferred by 15%, while less than 1% wished to carry either the Stoner rifle, the AK-47, a carbine or a pistol. Quote, "In March 1970, the President's Blue Ribbon Defense Panel concluded that the issuance of the M16 saved the lives of 20,000 U.S. servicemen during the Vietnam War, who would have otherwise died had the M14 remained in service." However, the M16 rifle's reputation continues to suffer. After the introduction of the M4 carbine, it was found that the shorter barrel length of 14.5 inches also has a negative effect on reliability, as the gas port is located closer to the chamber than the gas port of the standard length M16 rifle, 7.5 inches instead of 13-inch. This affects the M4's timing and increases the amount of stress and heat on the critical components, thereby reducing reliability. In a 2002 assessment, the USMC found that the M4 malfunctioned 3 times more often than the M16A4. Thereafter, the Army and Colt worked to make modifications to the M4S and M16A4S in order to address the problems found. In tests conducted in 2005 and 2006, the Army found that on average, the new M4S and M16s fired approximately 5,000 rounds between stoppages. In December 2006, the Center for Naval Analysis released a report on U.S. small arms in combat. The CNA conducted surveys on 2,608 troops returning from combat in Iraq and Afghanistan over the past 12 months. Only troops who fired the weapons at enemy targets were allowed to participate. 1,188 troops were armed with M16A2 or A4 rifles, making up 46% of the survey. 75% of M16 users reported they were satisfied with the weapon. 60% were satisfied with handling qualities such as handguards, size, and weight. Of the 40% dissatisfied, most were with its size. Only 19% of M16 users reported a stoppage, while 80% of those that experienced a stoppage said it had little impact on their ability to clear the stoppage and re-engage the target. Half of the M16 users never experienced failures of the magazines to feed. 83% did not need the rifles repaired while in theater. 71% were confident in the M16's reliability, defined as level of soldier confidence the weapon will fire without malfunction, and 72% were confident in its durability, defined as level of soldier confidence the weapon will not break or need repair. Both factors were attributed to high levels of soldiers performing their own maintenance. 60% of M16 users offered recommendations for improvements. Requests included greater bullet lethality, new-built rifles instead of rebuilt, better quality magazines, decreased weight, and a collapsible stock. Some users recommended short-run lighter weapons such as M4 carbine. Some issues have been addressed with the issuing of the improved SDANAG magazine in March 2009, and the M855A1 enhanced performance round in June 2010. In early 2010, 2 journalists from the New York Times spent 3 months with soldiers and Marines in Afghanistan. While there, they questioned around 100 infantry troops about the reliability of their M16 rifles, as well as the M4 carbine. The troops did not report reliability problems with the rifles. While only 100 troops were asked, they engaged in daily fighting in Marja, including at least a dozen intense engagements in Helmand Province, where the ground is covered in fine powdered sand that can stick to firearms. Weapons were often dusty, wet, and covered in mud. Intense firefights lasted hours with several magazines being expended. Only one soldier reported a jam when his M16 was covered in mud after climbing out of a canal. The weapon was cleared and resumed firing with the next chambered round. Furthermore, the Marine Chief Warrant Officer responsible for weapons training and performance of the 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, reported that, "We've had nil in the way of problems. We've had no issues with his battalion's 350 M16s and 700 M4s. NATO standards. In March 1970, the U.S. recommended that all NATO forces adopt the 5.56 x 45 mm cartridge. This shift represented a change in the philosophy of the military's long-held position about caliber size. By the mid-1970s, other armies were looking at M16-style weapons. A NATO standardization effort soon started, and tests of various rounds were carried out starting in 1977. The U.S. offered the 5.56 x 45 mm M193 round, but there were concerns about its penetration in the face of the wider introduction of body armor. In the end, the Belgian 5.56 x 45 mm SS-109 round was chosen in October 1980. The SS-109 round was based on the U.S. cartridge but included a new, stronger, heavier, 62-grain bullet design, with better long-range performance and improved penetration. Due to its design and lower muzzle velocity, the Belgian SS-109 round is considered more humane because it is less likely to fragment than the U.S. M193 round. The NATO 5.56 x 45 mm standard ammunition produced for U.S. forces is designated M855. In October 1980, shortly after NATO accepted the 5.56 x 45 mm NATO rifle cartridge, Draft Standardization Agreement 4179 was proposed to allow NATO members to easily share rifle ammunition and magazines down to the individual soldier level. The magazine chosen to become the SDANAG magazine was originally designed for the US M16 rifle. Many NATO member nations, but not all, subsequently developed or purchased rifles with the ability to accept this type of magazine. However, the standard was never ratified and remains a draft SDANAG. The NATO accessory rail SDANAG 4694 or Picatinny rail SDANAG 2324, or a tactical rail, is a bracket used on M16 type rifles to provide standardized mounting platform. The rail comprises a series of ridges with a T-shaped cross-section interspersed with flat spacing slots. Scopes are mounted either by sliding them on from one end to the other, by means of a rail grabber, which is clamped to the rail with bolts, thumb screws or levers, or onto the slots between the raised sections. The rail was originally for scopes. However, once established, the use of the system was expanded to other accessories, such as tactical lights, laser aiming modules, night vision devices, reflex sights, foregrips, bipods, and bayonets. Currently, the M16 is in use by 15 NATO countries and more than 80 countries worldwide.